everybody, I promised that I was going to address the question of why didn't I write the entire Solace book myself? So that's what I'm going to get into today. So a few days ago, I was watching a TED Talk by John Koenig or Koenig. I'm not entirely sure how he pronounces his last name. He says he's German, so I'm assuming that it's Koenig. Anyway, he is the author of the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, and basically his project was trying to define certain emotions, and these emotions lack words in the English language. So he's trying to correct this. And one of my favorite words from this book has always been Sonder. So that is defined as the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, populated by their own ambitions, friends, routines, worries, and inherited craziness. And it goes on from there. And although this word is technically made up and, it might not be in the Oxford English Dictionary yet, it is still an important part of the human condition, and it's an important part of empathy. It is so easy to take a person that you don't know, take their experiences, their whole lived existence for however many decades, and just turn it into a hard statistic. And as a scientist, I was expected to do this in school. Reduce it to cause and effect, before and after. And specifically to condense people's subjective experiences, to collect them into a qualitative study, or even sometimes completely getting rid of their own experiences and just going by the signs and symptoms of their body into a quantitative study. So it completely removes the whole human experience of this, and it turns them into an object as opposed to a subject. And as somebody who really loves science, quantitative studies are awesome in a way, because you can say definitively that yes, there is a correlation between two events. Not necessarily causation, that's a little bit harder to prove, but leaning towards it. But there is something a little bit inhuman about divorcing a person's experiences from the whole cause and effect deal. And if you want to believe in synchronicity or what have you, Derek of Veritasium uploaded a video last week called Why Anecdote Trumps Data, and showed that while statistically speaking a quantitative study with a large cohort is always more credible in science, sometimes personal experiences and strong relatable narratives are more memorable. They carry more weight, emotionally speaking, that whole human condition. So if you take anybody in a cafeteria, for instance, and you give them a hard study in one hand and then a relatable story on the other hand, and those two experiences might be contradictory, most people are probably going to relate better to the personal narrative, even if it might not be scientifically that strong. So for somebody like myself who is very familiar with the scientific method, I am constantly conflicted by how I want to relay information. Of course, I would absolutely love to do a longitudinal study on the long-term physiological effects of wearing corsets. I've been saying this for a good 3 to 4 years now. But every study starts with a proposal, and this upcoming ebook, this anthology, while it's full of what some people might say anecdata, which, might very well be poo-pooed by some, it will inevitably start a conversation. But I want to come back to my original point on empathy. So through this anthology, many people have poured out their hearts. They've opened themselves up to interview, they've made themselves vulnerable, they've allowed you to step inside of their experience and live vicariously through them. And normally the word vicarious is associated with something positive. It's a form of escapism that allows a person to, ignore how bad or boring their own experience might be and step into adventure, or pretend that you're a person of affluence or influence or what have you in video games and books and movies. But that's kind of not the type of vicarious I'm talking about when it comes to this book. I would say that most of the stories in this book are about adversity. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, because I know that some of you are very sensitive. I would go as far to say that some stories in this book will be considered triggering, but in many ways, stories of adversity are important too. You know, there's a reason why many people cheer for the underdog. You know, you see yourself in them and you want them to succeed. With these testimonials, they don't all necessarily have happy endings, and I know that sounds pessimistic, but I say this for two reasons. One, it's not actually the end at all. You know, the writers are still very much alive. You know, the end of their story is their true lived experience up to that moment. But it's by no means the end. And two, can you say it's a happy ending if it's not perfect? I think a lot of people are really attracted to the idea of a happy ending, and that there's a point in life where you never encounter any problems ever again, and that is just not the way that life works. But you will see where these writers have come from and where they are now. And for some people, it's not even about achieving perfection. For them, it's about looking up. You know, it's about a journey towards recovery, improved health, a high quality of life, or even a higher quality that they once had. These are stories of inspiration and motivation to, you know, get to a place that you want in life using the tools that you have. And sometimes those tools don't have to be very complicated. Sometimes they can be a corset, you know, just a piece of clothing, and you'll see what a piece of clothing can do. So now coming back to the question, why didn't I write this entire book myself? It sounds like I didn't put any work into it at all. Well, even though there are over 100 writers, you know, who contributed to this book, there was still a considerable amount of time and effort put in on my part, and money, actually, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I am the organizer, the compiler, the editor, the interviewer, and transcriber for some people who were too ill to write their stories and they preferred to send in their stories through other means, like recording or Skype or whatnot. I made sure that the writers were properly compensated, was following up to get in their contracts. So it's not like I had no role in this book. And obviously my story is going to be included as well. I did start writing introductions to every chapter because I wanted to go into some detail about the physiological effects of corset wear as it relates to each chapter. But then I soon realized that I had enough material to make like mini ebooks or at least pamphlets for nearly every single chapter. So I got lots of material for the future, but I gotta focus on one project at a time. And like I said before, I can't make this book like 2,000 pages. But I think more the point that people were trying to make by asking me this question is, who would possibly care about a book filled with the testimonials of strangers? And that's why I sort of started this whole video with that lesson on Sonder and empathy, because even though these writers are not right in front of the camera and, you know, they don't have the same sort of visibility that I have, their experiences are still important, whether or not you care about them. And it's because of people within the community, you know, the people who are watching this video right now. It's because of you that I have had so much material to make videos all these years. You know, you ask me a question and you make me think about things in a different way so that I go off and research it and let you know what I find. Or sometimes you introduce me to other people who have answers that I don't have the answers to. You know, I don't pull knowledge just out of the ether. That whole quote about, you know, if I can see so far, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. There are just so many people and so many experiences who come into play when you are dealing with any sort of research or any information in general. You know, I like to think that I have good research skills. I have done my footwork, yes, but I know what I know because of people like you within the community. And I'm indebted to these writers for even being comfortable enough to, you know, email me and share with me what they know or what their experiences are, because that is how we collectively grow. There's nothing quite like a true first-person testimonial, you know, like straight from the source. Even though, yes, a quantitative longitudinal cohort study is the strongest form of research, a personal narrative will always be better than me, you know, condensing down people's experiences and just giving a list of stats and referring to somebody as like a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. The more you twist and condense and the more, you know, steps in that whole telephone game that you go through, the less credible the information becomes. So short of doing a quantitative study, and I haven't been able to get my foot in the door to be able to do that yet, the next strongest publication that I could probably focus on is an anthology like this. So for those who are objecting to the idea of an anthology, well, I mean, you don't have to read the book. You don't. But really, I think we're focusing on the wrong question. The question should be, what good is my platform and this channel and my social media presence and the privilege I have of being in front of all of you, and the fact that your information has in part brought me this platform in the first place. What good is any of it if I don't use it to give leverage to the other voices in this community that would not otherwise be heard?